Chapter 1: The Job Offer That Changed Everything. The bitter wind bit at Lena's skin as she pulled her coat tighter around her body. The city had never felt colder, lonelier. She exhaled, watching her breath swirl in the air before disappearing, just like her dreams. 2 months ago, she had been let go from her last job, a cruel twist of fate that left her drowning in overdue bills. She'd spent weeks searching for new work, sending out resumes, going to interviews, but nothing stuck. It was always the same. "We'll be in touch." But they never were. Now she was down to her last few dollars, barely scraping by on instant noodles and borrowed time. That's why when she saw the ad for a live-in nanny position with an absurdly high salary, she thought it had to be a mistake. Wealthy single fathers didn't just throw money at random strangers to watch their kids, but desperation made people do reckless things. And so she found herself standing at the towering wrought iron gates of Blackwood Manor, clutching the email confirmation in her freezing hands. The estate was intimidating, to say the least. A sprawling mansion loomed beyond the gate, its dark stone walls half covered in ivy. The place felt like something out of a Gothic novel, secluded, grand, and eerily quiet. As she hesitated, debating whether to press the intercom button, the gate suddenly creaked open. Her stomach tightened. Had someone been watching her? With no other option, she stepped inside. The butler, an elderly man with sharp eyes, led her into a study that looked as intimidating as the rest of the house. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, and a massive fireplace cast flickering shadows across the room. And then she saw him. Damian Blackwood. He stood by the window, dressed in a crisp black suit, his tall frame exuding quiet authority. His presence filled the space effortlessly. He wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful, the kind of man people obeyed without question. And he was looking at her with an unreadable expression. "Miss Carter," he said smoothly. "You're early." She cleared her throat, trying to find her voice. "I like to be punctual." "Good." His gaze was sharp, calculating. "Let's not waste time. You applied for the nanny position. Do you have experience with children?" "I do," she said quickly. "I worked as a teacher's assistant before." He didn't seem impressed, nor did he seem disinterested. He walked over to the desk, flipping through a file, her file. Lena swallowed. There was something about him that put her on edge. He wasn't cruel, but he was cold, as if warmth was something he had long since forgotten. Then, without looking up, he asked, "Are you afraid of me, Miss Carter?" The question caught her off guard. "No," she lied. A flicker of amusement crossed his features. "Good." The butler returned just then, nodding slightly at Damian. "Master Theo is ready." At the mention of the child, Damian's expression changed. It was subtle, but Lena caught it, a flicker of something guarded, protective. He turned back to her. "Come." Lena followed him through the halls of the estate, her heart pounding. This was it, the moment she would meet the child she was meant to care for, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. Theo Blackwood sat on the floor, building a tower of wooden blocks. He looked up when they entered, his big blue eyes, her eyes, locking onto hers. And Lena's world tilted, because Theo was her mirror image. Same hair color, same dimples, same way his nose crinkled slightly when he was focused. It was impossible. And yet, as he stood up and took a hesitant step forward, her breath caught in her throat. Then, in the softest voice, the boy whispered, "Mommy?" Chapter 2: A Child's Strange Familiarity. Lena's breath hitched in her throat. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with an invisible force pressing down on her. She must have misheard him. That was the only explanation. Theo couldn't have called her mommy. And yet, the word hung between them, lingering like a ghost. Lena forced a shaky smile. What did you say?" The little boy blinked up at her, his tiny hands clenching the fabric of his sweater. He looked confused now, as if realizing his mistake. "Nothing," he mumbled, ducking his head. Lena's heart pounded. She turned to Damian, expecting him to be just as shocked, but his face was unreadable. Cold. Detached. "You must excuse Theo," he said, his voice even. "He hasn't had a nanny in a long time." There was something off about the way he said it, as if he were deliberately brushing aside what had just happened. Lena forced herself to nod. Of course. But inside, she was reeling. From the moment Lena officially started the job, Theo clung to her like she was the only safe thing in his world. It wasn't normal. He followed her everywhere, his small footsteps echoing hers as she moved through the estate. He reached for her hand absent-mindedly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. At night, she'd check on him, only to find him curled up in bed, clutching a faded stuffed bunny. But the most unsettling part, he'd call out, "Mommy," in his sleep. It made her chest tighten in ways she couldn't explain. One evening, as she tucked him in, she finally asked, "Theo, why do you keep calling me that?" The boy hesitated. His small fingers gripped the blanket. "You feel like her," he whispered. A shiver ran down Lena's spine. She swallowed. "Like who?" "My mommy," he said simply. "The one from before." Lena's hands trembled as she smoothed his hair. What did that mean? The one from before? Theo was only 4. His words could be the ramblings of a child who missed his mother. But why did it feel like something more? Later that night, Lena found Damian in his study, his face half shadowed by the glow of his desk lamp. She hesitated before speaking. "Theo thinks I remind him of his mother." Damian didn't react at first. He merely flipped a page in the book he was reading. Then, in a voice that was too calm, he said, "He's just a child. Don't take his words too seriously." Lena frowned. "But You're here to do a job," Damian interrupted, his voice cool, "not to question things that don't concern you." The finality in his tone sent a chill through her. It was a warning, a silent demand to drop the subject. But Lena couldn't, because something about Theo, about this entire situation, felt wrong, and she wasn't going to stop until she found out why. Chapter 3, Whispers from the Past. The silence in Blackwood Manor had weight. It pressed against Lena's skin, filling the spaces between whispers and unspoken truths. She had been here for nearly a week now, and the eerie familiarity Theo had with her only grew stronger. The way his little hands reached for hers, the way his sleepy murmurs of "mommy" lingered in the dark, each moment left her with more questions than answers. But Damian had made it clear. Shh, some things were not meant to be questioned. And yet, how could she ignore it? One evening, after putting Theo to bed, Lena found herself drawn to the piano room. It was beautiful, tucked away in the east wing of the mansion, bathed in moonlight that streamed through the tall windows. The polished black grand piano stood untouched, dust settling on its ivory keys. Something about it called to her. Without thinking, she sat down, her fingers hovering over the keys. She hadn't played in years. And yet, her hands moved on their own. A melody drifted from the piano, soft and sorrowful. Lena froze. She knew this song. She could feel it deep in her bones, in the aching parts of her soul. But she had no idea where she had learned it. She played through the final note, her heart hammering in her chest. Then, "You know that song?" Lena turned sharply. Theo stood at the doorway, his small face filled with something close to wonder. "Yes," she said hesitantly. "Do you?" He nodded, stepping closer. "My mommy used to play it." Lena's throat went dry. The same song? The same melody she had played without even thinking? How was that possible? Her chest tightened as Theo climbed onto the piano bench beside her, pressing his small fingers to the keys. "She would play it when she thought no one was listening," he murmured, "but I always listened." A chill ran down Lena's spine. She had played this song before. She knew it deep in her soul, so why did she have no memory of ever learning it? Later that night, Lena tossed and turned in bed. Her dreams were fragmented. A woman's voice humming that same lullaby, the sensation of warm arms holding a child, the sound of laughter that felt too familiar. Then, an accident. Shattered glass. A blinding pain. A man's voice, deep and desperate. "Stay with me. Don't close your eyes." Lena woke with a gasp. Her heart pounded as she sat up, her breath ragged. The dream had felt so real, like a memory buried deep inside her. But it couldn't be. She had never been in an accident. Had she? Lena pressed a hand to her forehead, confusion swirling inside her. Something wasn't right. Why did she feel like she had lived this life before? Determined to find answers, Lena went to the library the next morning. She scanned the shelves, looking for anything that might give her insight into the Blackwood family. Old newspaper clippings, history books, family records. Then, tucked between 2 dusty tomes, she found a photo album. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. Damian stood in most of the pictures, always looking serious, always alone, until she turned the page and saw her, a woman. She was laughing, her hair wind-swept as she held a toddler in her arms. Lena's heart nearly stopped, because the woman in the picture looked exactly like her. Her mind spun. It wasn't possible. This had to be a mistake. Desperately, she searched for a name. There, at the bottom of the photograph, written in elegant script, were three simple words: Elena Blackwood, 2021. The album slipped from her hands, landing with a dull thud on the carpet. Elena, the name like a ghost, whispering in her ears. And suddenly, Lena knew one thing for certain. Her past wasn't just missing. Someone had erased it. Chapter 4. The Forgotten Truth. Lena sat frozen on the library floor, her breath shallow as she stared at the name beneath the photograph. Elena Blackwood. The woman in the picture looked exactly like her. Same face, same eyes, same dimple in her left cheek. It was impossible. Her hands shook as she reached for the photo album again, flipping through the pages in a frenzy. Every picture of Elena felt like a punch to the gut, a haunting reflection of herself in another life. But that wasn't the worst part. The dates. The last photo of Elena Blackwood was from 4 years ago. And then nothing. No mention of her after that, as if she had ceased to exist. Lena's stomach twisted. She had always felt like something was missing in her past, a strange emptiness, an inexplicable sense of déjà vu in moments that shouldn't have been familiar. Now, staring at the evidence in front of her, she couldn't shake the chilling thought creeping into her mind. What if Elena Blackwood wasn't just some woman who looked like her? What if she had been Elena Blackwood? But that was crazy, wasn't it? Lena stormed through the dimly lit halls of Blackwood Manor, gripping the photo album so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She found Damian in his study, seated behind his grand mahogany desk, his expression unreadable as usual. "Who is she?" Lena demanded, slamming the open album onto the desk. Damian barely looked at it. "You've been snooping." "I deserve to know," she snapped. "Who was Elena Blackwood?" His jaw tightened. He leaned back in his chair, regarding her with that same cold detachment that always made her feel like she was walking into a trap. "She was my wife." The words hit her like a slap. Lena's pulse roared in her ears. She looked down at the photo again. The way Damian stood beside Elena, the way his fingers barely touched her back in each picture, there had been a distance between them even then. "And," she pressed, her voice shaking. "And she died," Damian said flatly. Lena flinched. "Dead?" She stared at him, waiting for him to elaborate, to say anything that made sense, but he just sat there, calm and immovable, like a man who had rehearsed this story 100 times. "How?" Lena whispered. Damian's eyes flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. He was hiding something. "A car accident," he said, too smoothly. "A tragic loss, but that's the past." Lena's breath hitched. The dream, flashes of shattered glass, of blinding pain, a man's voice, desperate and raw. "Stay with me, don't close your eyes." She gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. Damian watched her carefully. Too carefully. "You're lying," she murmured. A muscle in his jaw ticked. "Excuse me?" "You're lying," she repeated, stronger this time. "I can feel it." His expression darkened. "You're letting Theo's nonsense get to you." "This isn't about Theo." She took a step closer, heart pounding. "Why do I look exactly like her? Why does your son treat me like I'm his mother?" Damian's grip on the desk tightened. For a moment, just a moment, something like anger, no, fear, flashed across his face. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. "You are not Elena," he said coolly, "and it would be best if you stopped chasing ghosts." Lena's blood ran cold. He knew something, and for the first time since stepping into this house, she realized Damian Blackwood wasn't just keeping secrets. He was protecting them. Lena barely slept that night. Damian's words played in her head on an endless loop. "You are not Elena." Then why did she feel like she was? Why did Theo recognize her? Why did her own memories betray her with flashes of a life she didn't remember living? She needed answers. And if Damian wouldn't give them to her, she would find them herself. The next morning, while he was out attending a business meeting, Lena searched the house. She combed through old rooms, dusty corners, forgotten spaces, until she found herself standing before a door at the end of the hallway. The attic. Her fingers hesitated on the handle, but only for a second. She pushed it open. Dust swirled in the dim light. Boxes and old furniture were scattered everywhere, relics of a past long buried. Lena sifted through old chests, drawers, anything that looked like it held pieces of the past. Then, buried beneath a pile of old books, she found a letter. The paper was aged, the ink slightly smudged, but the name at the top was clear enough to make her knees go weak. Elena. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. her eyes scanning the faded handwriting. And then her breath caught, because the letter wasn't from Damian. It was to Damian, and the words were desperate. If something happens to me, don't let them take Theo. You know what they did to me. You know who I am. Lena's entire body went cold. She gripped the letter, her heartbeat wild. Elena had been afraid of someone, afraid of something. And if she had written this letter before she died, then maybe, just maybe, she hadn't died at all. Maybe she had simply disappeared. Maybe someone had made her disappear. Lena clutched the letter to her chest, her mind racing with a terrifying realization. She hadn't just stumbled into Blackwood Manor. She had been brought back. But by who? And why? One thing was certain. Damian Blackwood wasn't telling her everything. And if she wanted the truth, she would have to tear it out of him herself. End of part 1. And that concludes part 1 of I Got Hired as a Nanny, but the child looks exactly like me. Secrets are unraveling, tension is rising, and Lena is closer than ever to discovering the truth, but at what cost? Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where betrayals will be revealed, emotions will run high, and love will be tested like never before. Stay tuned. The best is yet to come.